Welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader. We are going to dive back into the Up in the Air series by R.K. Lilley. Now, if you have not listened to the reviews for the first two books in the series, those links are going to be available down below in the description section. Once you finish those, come and join us as we dive into book 3, Grounded. We pick up right where we left off, which is them being in the back of the vehicle and Bianca just finding out what happened to Sharon. So Javier and Steven are looking at her with, of course, pure concern. James is holding her. They're on their way to the penthouse. He does tell her, he's got to go back to work, but he wants to see her at his office at like 10 or 11. So this must have been like a red eye flight. So they get to the place, the penthouse, and he gives them a tour. They, of course, are like, loving the view. It's a great penthouse. And so he kisses her before he has to go. And it's like this desperation kind of kiss. And he says, like, promise me you'll be there at 11. And she goes, okay, I'll promise. But it was like weird, this desperation. Like, why does he have this desperation in his voice? And she's like, I told you, I promise I'll be there. I'll be there. So he leaves. She goes back up. It feels strange because she did ride the elevator down with him. It does feel strange going to their bedroom without him being there. But eventually she is able to fall asleep. She wakes up kind of groggy and goes to the closet. Everything is put together. Everything's matched with the shoes. So she's got wedges and tennis shoes because those are what she likes. So that at least made her happy that he had listened to her when she said what she liked, and he kind of made sure that's what she had. So she picks out an outfit, and I think Jackie, if I'm not mistaken, she did put these looks together. So even though she's not a big fan of Jackie, she does have to give her kind of her props because the outfits look great. So Jackie pops in and sees that she doesn't have a bag, and she's like, you've got to have a bag. So she has like all these bags laid out, and she doesn't want to clutch. She's like, I don't want to hold anything. I want a long strap. So she found this satchel type of bag. She put that on her arm. That'll work. And so she's still having this cold, demeanor with Jackie because she really doesn't like her. And even though she likes the clothes she's picked out, that hasn't changed. I'm not going to knock her because Jackie did come off a little strong. So I get it. So now she's running a little late and she's got to get to see James. She gets to the elevator. She's got all the security. Blake is there, the woman from Las Vegas. She must be like the head of her security team, I'm starting to think. There's some other guys. One of the guys' name is Johnny, and then there's one named Williams, and what's another one? I forget the other guy's name. But anyway, the Johnny guy winds up asking her while they're in the vehicle, like, how do you like your move to New York? And she's like, what are you talking about? I'll be going back and forth. I've always had a route to New York for years, but I still have my place in Las Vegas. And he's like, so you're going to keep working? And she's like, yeah, why wouldn't I? And he says, because he's spending like 4 times what you're making in a week on security for these flights. And so Blake tells him to shut up, and says, if you upset her, you'll get fired. And she's like, hell, he might get rid of all of us. So then they get to the Cavendish Hotel, and long behold, who walks up? Jolene. So she, of course, is in some barely there workout gear. And the Johnny guy says that's the hottest woman he's ever seen. And she thinks officially she does not like Johnny. So then Jolene comes up and she's like, oh, hi, Bianca. How are you? And all this fake crap, right? And Bianca wasn't in the mood for it. She was just kind of like, what are you doing here? And she says, I was working out. I wore this because James likes to see my stomach. He likes my body and all this type of stuff. So she keeps talking, and then James comes up behind them, like out of the elevator, and he goes off on Jolene. He was like, I told you to leave this morning when you tried to barge into my office. I kicked you out. And if I have to remove you from the premises, I will. So Jolene goes, I'm staying here with Scott. You wouldn't do that to him. And he says, I will, because I'm a little sick of you harassing me and my girlfriend. So then this big guy comes up, and it's Scott. So here's the thing, Scott's her husband. Apparently, when James found out she was married, I guess he had stopped fucking with her. And also, some kind of way he introduced her to Scott. So I don't know how that worked. That's a little weird. But the guy is going off, and he's like, saying he's a little dumb. Okay. And I say this because you don't see James coming around your girl. Your girl is coming around James. So why are you have all this, anger towards James? And I'm like, shouldn't you be mad with the woman you're married to? Like, this is crazy. But he accuses James of bothering his wife and all this type of stuff. And I'm just floored because I'm like, you're in James's hotel. You could have stayed at any other hotel. And I don't know, maybe he lives there. Maybe that's the situation. But if you're living at a hotel that expensive, that means you can also live at another hotel that's expensive, right? You don't have to stay there. That's just weird to me. But yeah, he was going off and basically, again, just making it seem like James is the problem. James keeps coming around Jolene, and he's making it difficult for Jolene, and it's such bull. He winds up saying to Bianca, just know that when he's done with you, he'll toss you to one of his rich friends. And I'm just like, I don't know. But that, of course, pissed off James even more so. And it's wild, again, that this guy's twisting the narrative to make sure that the whore he married isn't the problem. It's everybody else, you know? So James is like, caressing on Bianca, and you can see the anger in Jolene. So again, right in front of Scott, this woman is clearly upset about the relationship that James has with Bianca, and you're still mad at James. He's an idiot. There is no hope. Like, there's nothing you can do with that level of delusion. You just can't. So James then told her, go to my office, put her in the elevator, sent two security guards with her. They checked his office, of course, it was safe, and they told her, we'll be right outside. So he, of course, has got this amazing view of the city. And then eventually James comes in the office and he tells her to turn around, and she can hear rage in his voice, which scares her a little bit, but also makes her wet at the same time, and she turns around. So when she does, he's furious. She can see a little blood on his collar, and she can also see his knuckles are bruised. He leads her back to where he's got a bed in his office. Now, she, of course, sees this. First thoughts are running through her mind because it looks like it's not exactly like the playground, but it's got some playground elements. So it's just kind of like, oh my gosh, you had chicks in here too, you know? And he starts off with like this horsehair type of uh, whip, which doesn't really hurt her at all. And she's just kind of thinking like, oh, if this is the punishment, I can handle this. So she's being punished for doubting him, and also for making him go days without her regardless of the reason. So keep in mind, she still works, and she's being punished for this. Again, this is where you have to understand that lifestyle, but does that mean every time she works she's going to get punished? Because that's a little ass backwards to me. To me, if you need complete control or whatever the fuck it is, then get someone who you can take care of financially and they're going to do everything you say, and that's that. She's not fully that person. You know that. I want to know why she's being punished for being who the fuck she is. That's the part that just doesn't make sense to me. He can be, I understand him kind of being upset about her doubting him, but at the same time, you can't get too fucking mad because y'all haven't been together that long. You really haven't. So it's just kind of like, I don't. I'm just saying, you haven't. And you keep having your ex females keep popping up, making stuff difficult. So that's a lot to ask. Like, a lot of times, people might not have to deal with that right at the beginning of the relationship. Maybe, maybe not. Normally, we can have some form of something before you have to start dealing with the exes, but that's all she's had to deal with from day one. It's just exes, exes, exes. So it's his past that's the problem. You've got a very sordid past. That's going to be very difficult for somebody to believe that all of a sudden you're all about this one person, especially when these other women can't let you go. I don't know how you fucked them, right? I don't know if you looked in their eyes, if you were as passionate. I don't know. So I feel like sometimes the things he says, the reason for the punishments just don't really make sense to me. But then again, that's why everyone can't be in those types of relationships. But I digress. He then amps it up to this freaking, like, I guess flogger or whip. It's got roses on it, but this one's really painful. And this one, he hit it like in the same spaces, which was like the back of her legs and her butt and this one almost made her cry. And it started making her wonder, like, I don't know if I should be doing this with him, you know. But again, remember, she's a, what is it, I can't even say the word. She's a masochist. There it goes. She's a masochist, which means she gets off on pain. And there's another word that it's another something else they get off on. But like humiliation, she gets off on that. So that's where again their relationship is a little, oh gosh, like somebody's got to be able to say this is wrong, because I don't see how they can stop, because he's a sadist and he gets off on pain and she likes the pain. So who's going to say stop? I'm still stuck on that. But anyway, he of course after um and she winds up coming, and that also makes her feel like I just experienced that level of pain and I'm coming, like something really is wrong with me, you know, like this is making stuff worse. And he F's her again, and he's telling her, look at me, all this type of stuff. And I don't know. I don't know. I just don't feel like they'll be really able to understand their limit. I hope they will. I hope one will be able to say, hey, that was too much for me. Because what do you have a safe word for if you're not going to use it? You know what I'm saying? She goes to sleep. When she wakes up, her clothes are not in the room. She goes out, wraps herself in the sheet. He's on the phone, but he winds up fingering her, making her come. She goes back to sleep, and then she wakes up, and it's almost like a replay. She walks in again, and this time he has her suck him off, and then he banged her, and yeah. So then he's got clothes for her in the office as well, and it looks like they're all matching, but matching to his clothes. So I will say this, The fact that he has clothes, it seems like everywhere that he has a closet, does feel as if he does definitely want you to be a part of his life. They get dressed. They're both wearing gray because James likes to match with her. As they're going down, security Blake is there as well. And James tells Blake, I want Johnny reassigned. And Bianca goes, wait a minute, why? What's the problem? And he says, well, when he was walking to the elevator, he was checking you out. And I need him protecting you, not checking you out. He can't do both at the same time. So she's like, I think you're being a little bit, possessive. I don't think he needs to be reassigned. She's not this huge fan of Johnny's, but she doesn't feel like that's reason enough to let him go. So she says, you did tell me I would have final say in my security. So is that really the case? So he says, fine, but if he does anything else, he's gone. She says, that's fine. So they go next door to the hotel, which is called Red. And it's got like all these different colors of red. It's really beautiful. She's walking in with security. She doesn't really like it because it's like it brings attention to her. But this is where she annoys me because she's not thinking logically. Your father is out to take you out. Like, you witnessed him do something and you've gone to the police. He knows you've gone to the police. And so this is not something that we can take lightly and think that you can just walk around and be normal, because that's not real. I think what kind of annoys me is that you had all this fear of this man, and now it's like, oh, I don't have it's like you don't recognize the reason you had the original fear anyway. So it's like you're a target. You're going to remain a target until that dude is put away. Like, you got to have your security. I don't really care how it looks. This is what has to be. And if you didn't have security, you would already be taken out. Because let's just be honest. He got to her pretty easily. So, just saying. They get to the restaurant. It's exclusive. Steven and Javier already there. They have the special great time. We find out that Steven and Javier went to James about opening a bar in Las Vegas, and James has decided he's going to give them the investment money. So she was really happy about that. It's great she's able to have things, but what makes her happier is that Steven is able to have things as well. So then Javier and Steven, they're going to go and catch a Broadway show. Bianca and James, they're going to head back to the penthouse. And she asks him, okay, what was the whole Jolene Scott story? What's that? So he tells her, I'll tell you when we get to the bedroom. She's like, you can't tie me up every time you need to tell me something. And he's like, I know that, but I'm not going to tie you up, but we'll just talk when we get in the room. So they get to the penthouse and he tells her what happened. So Jolene was his sub first. Scott saw her. He was friends with Scott. Scott saw her, fell in love, and when he was done with Jolene, he made the introduction. Well, fast forward 2 weeks after him and Jolene met, Scott and Jolene, they got married. James didn't know this. So when Jolene came around, he wound up fucking with her because he was in between subs. And he found out she was married, because she admitted that she was married with Scott, because she was trying to make the case of, it's okay, I can't do anything serious either because I've married Scott. But he's like, I don't do married women. Well, she then went and divorced Scott, thinking that that would make James want to be with her. And he still didn't want to be with her. Now, he would still bang her every now and then, but that was the extent of it because she was a good outlet for the type of sex that he likes. But like he said before, he didn't really like her. but she has a certain need and he as well, and that's what it is. So the night before he met Bianca was the last time that he had banged Jolene. And my thing again, the Scott guy, he apparently has remarried Jolene. And I'm just like, he's a lost cause. There's nothing anyone can do because even when he sees it in his face, he still won't let go of that woman. They fall asleep. She has a nightmare. She's in her old house. Her father's there, but instead of her mom's dead body, she sees Sharon's dead body. And then she watches as her father offs James. That makes her wake up screaming. He takes her into the bath to calm her down, washes her off. She falls back asleep, wakes up. He's got to go back to work. She decides, hey, she's up. She's going to paint. So she goes, the security woman, Blake, winds up knocking on her door saying, hey, you need to keep your phone with you because Mr. Cavendish wants to speak with you. So she calls him back, and he, of course, is like, you need to keep your phone with you. Lana's been trying to reach out. She wants to have lunch. He's like, but I want to see you tonight, X, Y, and Z. So apparently they're going to have their fourth floor playground session. That's what we'll call it later. So she gets a call from a number. It's a New York number. She's thinking it's Lana. It isn't. It's Sven Jr. So she, of course, is in like a state of shock. He tells her, like, that he's wanted, to meet her for a long time. And he'd like for them to get together. And he doesn't sound anything like her father. So she does tell him, she's sorry for what happened to his mother. And she does agree to meet up with him within the coming weeks. So we'll see how that goes. I'm a little skeptical. But, the girl went through such a horrible ordeal with that dad. I don't know. You just wonder. But the mom did say that, his mom, Sharon, did say that he had cut off contact with them for like the past few years. So, I guess hopefully he's not working with the dad. I'm always looking for a twist, as you can see. So then she gets another call. This time it's from Lana. They're going to meet up for lunch. And so when she goes out, she puts on some jewelry. And she's got her collar, of course. And then she sees a little note on a white box. And it's a note from James saying that these were his mother's. And he knows that normally she wouldn't want to wear them, but he's begging her not to reject them. And so she decides not to. She puts them on. They're diamond studs with like sapphires or something. And she meets up with Lana at the Light Cafe, which is out of the Cavendish Hotel. And so Lana's there, and James has called the paparazzi. Because remember, Lana works for a hotel business as well. And so he wanted the paparazzi to catch her being at his place. So now the press see, even the competition can't stay away. That's funny. It's pretty clever. So anyway, they sit down. They have a conversation. She, of course, asked her about the Akira backstory. And she was like, I knew you were going to ask me that. So she says she was 10. He was 20. She had a crush on him. He taught her how to surf. And when she turned 18, she basically told him, either you take my virginity or I'm going to give it to a frat boy and I'll probably get an STD. That's how it happened. That's insane. So, the next day, she overheard him talking to someone about it, saying that it was basically a pity fuck. It crushed her. She moved away from the island, and Bianca's like, so you're still in love with him? And she's like, yeah. And there's nothing that can be done about it now. He's apparently, I heard a while back, he was getting married to his high school sweetheart. So that's done. I don't need any entanglements. I have my work and I'm fine. I don't believe her, but I think, again, maybe being super, working a lot helps her focus away from that pain. So then Jackie pops up and Bianca's expression changes and Lana can tell, oh, you don't like her. And she kind of lets her know Jackie isn't she's not a bad person. You just got to get to know her. So Jackie comes over, and at first Lana wasn't going to let her sit down because Lana was like, no, you can't. Like, we're having lunch. You need to go. But eventually Bianca was like, just sit down and what do you want? So Jackie's like, there's so many events that are coming up and you've got to attend them now that you're with James. And she's like, you have responsibilities. And that set Bianca off. Bianca's like, you can't tell me anything about responsibilities. I've had to take care of myself since I was a child. You're probably still living off of your trust fund. And Jackie went, oh, I wasn't trying to offend you. She's like, well, would you just think about it? Hopefully you'll change your mind. Just let me know. And she left. And Lana was like, again, you just got to give her time. But she's probably also wanting to have people see if she's dressing you, paparazzi follows, she's gonna get business. Her it gets bigger behind that, you know. But Lana had an idea. She said, do this. Tell her you only want up and coming designers. She's going to hate the task, but she's going to do everything in her power to meet it. You just got to give her hard tasks, and that tends to do it for her. Lana gets a phone call. She's got to go back for some meetings. James, of course, pops in. They walk her out. He's done for the day, so it's about 2 o'clock. They go back to the penthouse. Steven and Javier are playing video games, and they went in the living room, and they wound up in joining them. Steven's really good at these. So Bianca was like, I want to be on Steven's team. And so every chance that James got, he took her out. And I think he probably felt some type of way because she wanted to be on Steven's team and not her and not his. So they did that for hours, and eventually he picked her up and they went to her studio. And she thought he was going to take her to the bedroom, but he took her to her painting studio. And he said, do you still want to paint me nude? And she says yes. He's like, okay, but the only condition is that you have to be nude as well. So she starts painting him nude first, and then he told her to take off her clothes. She did, and she didn't feel as crazy painting without her clothes as she thought she would. So then she started painting parts of herself, like around her breast and down her stomach, and he's beyond turned on now. And so then she starts painting on his body, and then they have this nice hard fuck. And she also had made a comment to him before that his dick was like ready to get up against her ass, and she says, when are you gonna take me there? And he says, when I get you prepped for it. And she's like, okay. So then after that, they have a nice heart fuck, and she realizes, like, this type of feeling will never go away. She gets it, and she gets how Lana feels being still hung up on Akira. They take a bath. They done fuck the tub all up. It's all blue. Um, then he takes her to the elevator, and he says, have you ever been fucked in the elevator? She says, you know I haven't. So he fucks her in the elevator. Takes her from there, takes her to the playroom, and he told her, I don't want you to associate this room with nothing but pain. It's also pleasure. So he puts her on the massage table, gives her the most amazing body massage. And while he's massaging her, he starts to work both holes. So he gets her relaxed enough and gets her ready. And then eventually he's able to fuck her in the ass. She comes. And then afterwards, they get in the tub and he's really quiet. And she's like, what's wrong? And he says, doing that puts me in a very dark place. So he tells her that, I think, what's his name? Spencer, his uncle? I can't remember. Because they mentioned so many names in this series. We're going to go with Spencer, okay? So he doesn't understand it, like, that particular act is what used to get done to him by his older cousin, because I'm really not 100% sure about the Spencer. that's the act that he used to do to him, and it kind of makes him feel sick after he does it, because it's what turned him into this type of person, needing the type of sex that he needs. And she says to him that that rose, that thing that he used, was the worst pain she'd ever felt from him, you know, and that scared her, because she still was able to pull pleasure and come from that. So again, this is where you've got a sadist and a masochist, and it's kind of like, how do you stop, you know? Because no one's saying this is too much for me. But maybe this is his way of saying that, because he's got tears in his eyes, you know. He did tell her that he doesn't like to do that, but if she needs him to do it, he'll do it. It puts him in a bad place. And she just kind of explains to him, I don't need that. I don't have to have that. It felt great. Like, it felt good. It felt different and you made it feel good, but I don't have to have it, especially if it's going to put you in that place. And then he kind of agrees not to use that damn rose thing on her any as well, because that was extremely painful for her. So it looks like this makes me a little happier, because it's like you're understanding that there's a boundary that you all don't need to cross. And that means you can at least start to say no about things. So that's good, because you watch him, he was still ready to do it to her, even if it puts him in this awful place. You know, that's just I'm sorry, but you just should never love somebody that much. You just shouldn't, when it's at the sake of yourself. It's not healthy. But you know, none of the books we read, like most of them, I don't. We might have found maybe a couple healthy type of loves. None of these are really healthy. She had a thought earlier after they had sex. It was kind of like that whole thing of, I won't survive him with a life without him. And then he kind of says it to her as well. And then she's kind of like, oh my gosh, is he like reading my thoughts? Oh gosh. So then she wakes up in the big bed, and Steven's there waking her up because James is already gone. And he's like, James gone to work. Javier's knocked out cold. So you and me are going to have breakfast in bed. And she's like, okay. So they're getting caught up on everything, and it's wonderful. Steven is just very honest, and he kind of lets her know, you need to stop trying to hold back how you feel. You need to tell him you love him. Nothing's going to stop. You know, you gotta, sometimes you're bracing for the worst. But he tells her, we don't have to live like that anymore, because they, had some experiences, and they talked about when they were really broke and can barely feed themselves, and it's always, always about survival. He's like, but that's not our life anymore. Even if James wasn't here, that is not our life anymore. We've gotten past that. So stop living your life like that. And I like that. He kept it gully with her. I love it. And she tells him, you're right. Nobody else can talk to her like that. She either goes off or she gets upset. But with Steven has never meant her any type of harm. He's only ever tried to protect her. And so when he tells her things, she does listen. So she told him about the brother. He seemed a little nervous. He asked her if she wanted him to come along. And he said, no, but I'm going to have security with me. She said, I'm going to have security with me, so it'll be okay. But he still looked a little worried. I think that's probably because, like, he's considered her brother. And then you have, like, this actual brother coming along. He might feel a little type of way. I think that's just probably natural, since he's been looking out for her so long, like a little sister. I get it. James has got a photo shoot, and she's going to go with him later on. And then our boy Steven, they're going to meet up with this guy named Vance and the crew, which okay, this is a little weird. Vance and Javier used to be in a relationship. I guess they're friends and they're supposed to hang out. And Steven says Javier swears, he's going to be on his best behavior. Vance is. It shouldn't be any drama. So I guess in previous times there was drama. We'll see. So I don't know. I kind of feel like maybe she should go. I don't know. I feel like Steven might need her just because this is an ex. She knows how that feels. I don't know. I just kind of feel like she should go with Steven. Or maybe start off hanging out with James and then, hanging out, excuse me, hanging out with Steven. Because this is the fact that there's a history of Vance being messy. That's the concern for me. And it's like if he does, and if Javier isn't 100, Steven's by himself. I don't like that. Steven is a good dude. Like, I don't know. We'll see. I hope nothing pops off. I really do. So after that, they have their great conversation, and James calls, and while he's talking to her, he's like, "Can you put Steven on the phone?" She gives the phone to Steven, and he's gonna buy Steven a place next door, so they'll be close. I get it. I mean, Steven is her safe space, has been for a very long time. He's kind of earned that. So I get it. So he tells her to come to his office at 2:30. She gets off the phone. She was about to tell him that she loved him, but she didn't. And we'll just kind of see. But Steven also reassures her, listen, I know our lives are changing, but we are always going to be in each other's lives. You are not getting rid of me. And that made her feel good because, she's always concerned. I don't think she'd survive losing Steven. I really don't. Steven helped her go get ready to meet James. She changed a bunch of times. He's going to a photo shoot, so she wants to feel like, she looks like she should be with some man that's had a photo shoot. So eventually she gets ready. She forgot to tell security she was ready, and the Blake woman kind of like, can you just let us know next time? And she's like, I'm sorry, X, Y, and Z. So they go and pick up James. There's a look on his face, but it just kind of melted away when he saw her. They have a nice, sweet moment in the vehicle. She was about to tell him she loved him again, but nope, security's around. She didn't want to do it. She found out he's 30. He just had a birthday a few weeks ago. And she's like, I didn't know. And she felt so awful. And she's like, how can I make it up to you? He said, never miss another birthday. Again, in that statement, that is sounding very much like forever. And he says to her, do you mean it? And because she says, I won't miss another one. He says, do you mean that? And she says, yes, I mean it. We'll see. They get to the photo shoot, lots going on. She's getting a little tired, but she's also getting anxious. So she gets a text message from Steven saying that, basically they're being stank with him. They're not being very nice. And she, of course, was like, do you want me to come there right now? Because I will. He says, no, 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 it's okay. I'm just going to go ahead and leave early and head home. And he's like, just after whatever you're doing, just come home to the penthouse and we'll hang out. And she's like, okay, no problem. So then James comes over to her. He's looking at her with so much desire. He's like, you better stop doing that, because I gotta, he can't be like hard in the photos. But I'm like, then maybe you should like stay back a while since you know how she, just looking at her does for him. So he's got his shirt off. He's debuting his tattoos, very much trying to prove his devotion. She's starting to realize he really is devoted like Steven is. And she's just trying to think, like, what did I do to ever deserve these two wonderful men? It almost feels too good to be true. They get through the photo shoot. They wind up asking her to be in it as well. They're like, well, hell, you're the inspiration for the new ink. You might as well get in it. So she's like, we need to ask James first. Um, and so when they went to ask him, he's just kind of like, you know, are you sure? He's like, I do think it would be good. At least we could control the pictures. And then when she agreed, he kind of seemed irritated, which I'm not really understanding that. So they get through the photo shoot. She looks at her phone because they've been there like 4 hours, and she sees messages from Steven. He's called, he's texted. He left a message saying, I'm headed back to the apartment. Call me, when you're able to. Um, he sends another message. I don't want to be alone right now. Like, now she feels awful. And you know what? My gut was right. I felt like she should have went with Steven because I felt like Steven needed her. I'm sorry. James didn't. He didn't. I felt like Steven the fact that he brought up to her about this, get together. I think he didn't want to corner her and tell her I need you to come because he knew if he would have said that it would have happened. She would have came, and he doesn't want to feel like he's pulling her away from James, and he doesn't want James thinking that either. But I felt like Steven might need her because going in meeting with someone's ex, I don't, that's not something that's always the most pleasant. So I just kind of felt like she could have been his support because again, I don't know about Javier just yet. The verdict is still out on him. And now that something's happened, I'm curious as to what the hell happened that's got Steven retreating within himself. Because when he said, I don't want to be alone right now, she knew, oh no, this is really bad. And so James sees that look on her face and he's like, what's wrong? She's like, Steven needs me now. I gotta go. So James is like, well, I'm coming with you. And the photographer director was like, hey, can you stay for we just need 30 more minutes to go over the questions for the interview. And he says, just send them to my office. We got a family, we got an emergency. So they get in the vehicle. She's, of course, rattled with guilt. And James is like, did he tell you to come with him earlier? Like when he first reached out, did he say to come to him? She says no. He says, well, then don't beat yourself up because you didn't know. We'll get to him. Everything's going to be okay. They get to the penthouse. She hears raised voices. She runs to where Steven is. He looks dejected. He's just standing there. His arms are folded. Javier is flailing, going off, and she sees it. Steven is he's shutting down. And so when she comes over, Javier goes, this is the problem right here. You just need to tell me how you feel. You won't do that. You'll only talk to her. And here's my thing with that statement. You haven't earned the right yet. Steven and Javier were together a month before they broke up. That was a year ago, right? They just got back together. It's been a couple of weeks. Why do you feel as if you are going to have the same level of trust as someone he has known since he was like 14, 15 years old? Tell me why. Explain to me why you think you're going to get that level of trust that fast. Doesn't make sense. But you feel you should have it. And him making that statement, I don't like anyway. I don't want to say, are they dependent on each other, Steven and Bianca? They are, but it's because they genuinely had to learn. That's how they survived, depending on one another, looking out for one another. They're letting other people into their lives, but why does that mean that closeness now has to die down some for other people? I just don't feel like it should. It's not like he tries to monopolize her time. He doesn't do that to her. She doesn't do that to Steven. So that's why, to me, I feel like it's still a healthy relationship because they don't let it affect their other ones. They still, like, Steven was still going out with people. He was still doing his thing. You know? She didn't date because she didn't want to date because of her trauma from childhood, right? But he never tried to stop her. He wanted her to get out there. So they've always encouraged each other to find someone to, have someone in their life. So that's why I don't think they have this toxic type of friendship. I don't feel they have that. And so when people start poking at it, it kind of irks me because it's like that's the purest thing that they both have in their lives. That's the truth. It's not sexual, doesn't have anything to do with that. It's just pure. She yells at Javier, "Give us a moment." And she has to say it again, and she says, "Now." So James leaves out as well. So then Steven tells her what happened. So the previous day, Steven had told Javier that he loved him. And he was met with the response of, "I need more time to evaluate my feelings." Steven said, "Even though it felt like rejection, I said, fine. Everyone has that right to take as much time as they need." Right? We go to the bar, which happened to be, I guess, where the Melvin guy was working that he was dating before. And the Melvin guy was friendly to Steven. And Javier asked Steven, "Did you two used to hook up?" And he said, "Yeah, we dated for a short period of time." And Javier goes into a jealous rage. Now keep in mind, we are meeting up with your ex-boyfriend that you claim you're still just friends with, right? But when you find out he dated someone while you were not together, you fly off the hinges? And then what made it worse is when Steven went to the restroom, he comes back out, and what does he see? Van and Javier kissing. And Javier wasn't fighting him back. So it's like you got an attitude with Steven, demanding for Steven to talk to you right now, and you're the one that's fucking up. Are you serious? So Steven is just like, I needed to step away. I need to evaluate, how I want to handle this. He didn't want to fly off the handle. See, Javier, this sounds like you like a lot of drama, right? You want the screaming matches. That's not Steven. Steven wants to be able to think about it. He wants to be able to work through this shit. You want a screaming match so you can, for some bullshit reasons. I don't like Javier. That's all I got. I don't like him. It's fucked up what he did. It's fucked up how he saw that Steven was upset and he still kept trying to like wail at him. I don't like that type of stuff. Cause Steven's a good fucking hearted person. He's not this bad person. So if someone treats him like that, see, this is when we get invested in the characters. Which is good writing, by the way, because you feel for Steven. You really do. I will get mad at Bianca before I get mad at Steven. Because Steven is just such a sweetheart. He's like the best character. Her and Steven wind up falling asleep. And as she's like waking up, she hears James say, "Are you going to talk to him?" And he says, "Yeah, I'm going to go talk to him." And also she hears Steven telling James, like, "You got to understand that she's terrified that when she tells you how you feel, you're going to reject her. And someone that just opens up, it's going to pummel her. She's terrified." So she could hear this conversation going on as she's coming to. So James carries her to their bedroom, And her and James have a talk, and we find out James left the room, but he was listening to the whole conversation because he stayed outside of the door. And he told her, I'm sorry, don't be mad, but I just couldn't leave you, especially when I heard you crying. And he said, I heard everything that you all talked about, but you got to understand what it feels like for us outsiders. Like, you need to make room for us in your heart as well. But it's like, again, you all are in their hearts, but you people are doing shit and then feel like you shouldn't talk to anybody else but us. They should have an outlet, and they are each other's outlet. I don't see anything wrong with that. I really don't. I just feel like you all want that level of trust so fast, and you just haven't earned it. That's my honest opinion. Steven is her refuge. That's just what he is, you know? And James is a bulldog, and he just tries to bulldoze his way through everything all the fucking time, and it's just kind of annoying, you know? But what I do know is I don't trust Javier. I'm pissed off at him because why again did you want to meet up with your ex? Like, if you and your ex have issues, right? Even more so. So we'll see. We do something that we haven't done in the first two books, and I'm so excited. We get another person's POV, and it's our favorite person, Steven. I'm so excited. So, Steven was about to go take a run through Central Park, even though it's late. It's later on. He knows it's kind of dangerous, but you know what? He could welcome a little violence at this moment. But Javier comes in the room and he says to him, I know you're going to break up with me, but can we please just talk and you know everything before you do it? So he allows him to come in, and then Javier says, can I touch you? And he said no. So then Javier tells him what happened. So Javier and Vance had a very tumultuous, dramatic, I figured. I just figured it. Type of relationship. They like to push the other one. Vance liked to do it a lot. He liked to push Javier to get this reaction, and once he gets the reaction, he was happy. He tells him, I was jealous of you and Melvin, and I did act a little childish, you know? But he said, I didn't go and kiss Vance. He said, what you saw was him kissing me and me giving him nothing. That's why I didn't fight back, because if I give him something, that's what he was looking for. So I just didn't kiss him back. I just stood there until it was over. So Steven was like, so you're telling me that he was assaulting you and I walked away? He's like, yeah, that's what happened. So this Vance guy does this to him all the time when he's around. So Steven asks the question, which is, well, why do you keep going around him? He says, I'm friends with the crew and I try not to make it awkward for them. But how much of are these people your fucking friends if they should know you don't want the guy? They should see what's going on. How are these your friends? That they're okay with this type of behavior, you know? Because that shouldn't be. So this makes Van a pretty awful person if he's doing these type of things. And he also needs to reevaluate his friendships. So then after they have the conversation, Steven was like, we don't need to be going around them anymore. Javier is like, I won't. He's like, I'm not going to be around him anymore. That was my last time. I was trying to give him an opportunity because he swore up and down that he wasn't going to try anything. And he was like, I didn't feel scared because I knew I had you. Because the Vance guy, he's a cute guy, but he's a little short dude. And he, again, thought Steven would have just beat him up. So Steven felt a little bad about it. Not too bad, but, he wasn't going to wallow in it, and I don't think he should, you know. Because at the end of the day, he still showed his ass about Melvin, and he didn't have a right to do that, but he did. So then after that, Javier sucked Steven off, and then right before they were about to bang, he did tell Steven, he asked Steven, did you tell Bianca what happened? And he said, of course I did. I tell her everything. And he's like, she's never going to forgive me. She's never going to like me again. She'll never accept us. And if she doesn't accept us, I know you'll leave me. And he was like, I do love you. He's like, I've loved you for over a year. I just said that part about needing more time to process my feelings because I was just being scared. But I do love you. And I think they actually had that conversation before he sucked him off, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, my thing is, and the reason I'm glad Steven isn't going to wallow in it, he should have told Steven what was going on with the Vance guy. Like, that was something you should have said, so that way Steven is now aware. But for you to not say anything, it just looks like you're hooking up with your ex-boyfriend. Period. You know? So again, you don't tell him everything, but you want him to tell you everything. Do you see how that works? That doesn't fucking work. But see, he tells Bianca everything and Bianca tells him everything. That's how they work. You can't ask of something that you're not willing to give. And that's my problem when it comes to Javier's ass as well as with James. When shit be going on, James don't always tell her. But yet the minute something happens with her, she's, she better tell him. That's why there's not this, you don't have that same level of trust and that same type of relationship because, y'all, it's not treated the same way. But Steven let him know when it comes to Bianca, Bianca doesn't operate like that. If I'm happy, Bianca's happy. We don't do that trying to talk someone out of being with someone. That's not how our friendship works. And Javier guy was like, okay, but he just need to chill out as far as I'm concerned. He just needs to chill out. So we switch back to Bianca's POV. She's still with our boy James. He goes and gets the scarf from the photo shoot, which was like this cashmere scarf. And he winds up like tying her up with it, and he eats her pussy, and then they fuck. They fall asleep. She wakes up after having that nightmare again, the one where James is offed. And so she jumps up and gets, he picks her up, puts her in the tub, holds her. And in her mind, she's thinking the reason that dream perturbs her so much is because the very thought of losing James, it feels like it would be pure despair. So she finally tells him. She says, I love you. And James lets out this breath. And he's like, I have been waiting to hear that from you for so long. And then she, of course, says, well, why aren't you saying it back? And he was like, could you not tell the way I treat you how I feel about you? He said, because she said, why didn't you say it first? And he said, because I have not used those words since my parents died, and I just was afraid that they would get rejected. And I'm not going to knock him for that because he would say the sweetest things and she wouldn't respond. So I get it. I'm not going to knock him for not saying it first. I get her needing to say it first for him. And maybe good for her as well, right? That it wasn't said to her, but it was still recognized and she was able to say it. We're going to give her that. Give them both that. He then proceeds to tell her all the ways of why he loves her. It's super sweet. He talks about how his parents were very much in love. His dad was completely devoted to his mom. His mom was very much like, she didn't like doing the luncheons and all that stuffy crap, but she loved charity. That was her thing. And I'm like, yep, sounds a lot like Bianca. She didn't come up with a lot either, his mother. So the mother and the father came from two different worlds. So he very much went and found a relationship like his parents. So it's morning, I think. They're having breakfast. She goes to check in on Steven, hears laughter. That made her happy because that meant that Steven was okay. And so if Steven's forgiven him, then that's all that matters. So she goes and sit down. Javier's kind of looking at her with this little cautious look. James goes and gets tea for everyone. He gets a phone call, and this looks come over his face, and he gets up and goes to take the call, and she instinctively gets up and follows him, and she listens outside of the door. He's on the phone with someone named Roger, and all she hears is him saying, pay whatever you need to take care of this. I don't care how much it costs. I just want this taken care of. I don't want anything affecting my future. Just get it done. He gets off the phone. She reveals herself, and she, of course, is like, are you okay? What's wrong? He doesn't tell her. But again, you don't say anything, but if she doesn't, you trip out. Anyway, I digress. So he doesn't tell her what it is. He just says that, does your love come with conditions? And she's like, what do you mean conditions? She's like, we're supposed to be in a monogamous relationship. And he's like, no, 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 no. He says, what conditions from my past could make your love change for me? And she's like, I don't see how anything could change that, you know? He kisses her. He wants to tie her up so she won't leave. And I'm like, oh, Lord, what is going to get exposed? Well, he never tells us. We don't know. He leaves it at that. They're heading back to Las Vegas today. She'll be back in New York tomorrow. He asked her, have you given any more thoughts about, just doing your paintings full time? And she says, I'm still mulling over the idea. He's like, well, I would appreciate a response after you made a decision. Seems a little irritated with her. So they get on the plane. She may have slept for an hour. She wakes up. Javier is still asleep. They're both laying on Steven. And she asks Steven what happened. Steven tells her everything. And she says, okay. She said, if you believe him, then that's all that matters. But Steven can tell she's skeptical, and he makes a comment like, I'm not the only trustworthy person in the world. You have to know and trust other people. And she tells him that she told James that she loved him. And she was like, looking at Steven like, are you going to ask me if he said it back? And he's like, that man worships the ground you walk on. We all knew it. When they land and get off the plane, it's all over the news that the airline is going bankrupt. It's just a matter of time before everything closes. So she messages James to see if he knew about it. And he's like, are you available to talk now? She says no, but when I get back on the plane, I can. So when she got back on the plane, she called him and he just laid it out to her. And he had an attitude. He basically was like, this has been coming for a long time. The reason he started taking the flight was because he was potentially going to invest in it. But then the owner doesn't want to make any concessions, but wants $100 million to save the business. And he's like, I'm not going to do that, And that's been the problem with everyone that has considered coming in to save the day. The owner won't budge. And so he's like, that's just the way it is. And he was kind of cold with it. And she was like, well, damn, that's really cold, And it pissed her off because, these are people's lives. She knows these people. She knows she'll be okay, but she is concerned about other people. So then she's having a conversation with Steven, and she's decided she's going to take the voluntary furlough because she doesn't have to work. There are people that need the shifts. Eventually, it's going to become mandatory for everyone, but she figures she'll go ahead and be one of the first ones to go. So the trip on the plane, it was a little sad. Damien and Murphy, they love to fly together, but they're probably not going to be able to do that anymore if they go to a new place. They got to hope they'll get hired at the same place. And then they've got to, work their way up to where they're, able to pick who they fly with, right? So it's like an end of an era. And it's sad. So she tells Steven she's going to take the voluntary furlough. He's like, were you scared to tell me? She's like, kind of. He says, I knew you were going to do it, you know? He's like, and everything's going to be fine. She gets back to New York. James is there with the driver to pick her up. He says something to Steven. Steven's got to go check in with the crew because he's the lead. Um, he's still being kind of icy, James is. She puts her hand on him and he says, like, are you trying to get fucked in front of an audience today? And she's just like, where the hell did that come from, you know? So then she tells him her decision about, going on furlough, and it didn't have anything to do with him. It was more about it just made sense. And she was like, she's ready to start talking about the showing. And he's like, great, I'll have Danica get with you when we fly back to Vegas tomorrow. So Danica beat out the other galleries for her work. So it seems like she's a real fan of it. She finds it weird because she doesn't think of herself as like having fans. She doesn't see herself as a real artist, you know? So, and then she doesn't trust his judgment because he loves her, but it's like, is that why you love it? Because you love me? Or is it really good art? Like, which is it? So I get that. So to have someone on the outside love it, she will need that boost of confidence. It'll help her, I think. She gets back to the penthouse. She takes a nap. She wakes up to a phone call from Steven. They're meeting at the Red, the crew. They're going to fly in the ones that aren't on this one and kind of have like a bankruptcy party. And so at first she's like, we got to get up early tomorrow. But then it's like, girl, you might as well enjoy this. Of course, James is going to meet her there. And that's cool. So she gets ready. Johnny's checking her out and she peeps it, and she does think about what he said. Like, yeah, if he's checking me out, he's too distracted to like be on her detail. She gets to the Red place and everyone's there. They're having a good time. She winds up having a conversation with Javier. Javier's like, I know you don't like me. I know you don't think I deserve him, and I know I don't. But I'm crazy about him. I have been. Like, I didn't date anybody when we broke up because I was just done for. So she asked him, why does he continue to hang around Vance? And he said he had wrote me a letter saying that, he knew things had been bad, but he wanted to fix it. And I finally was like, okay, it'll make it easier hanging around the crew because we're all friends. But he hasn't changed, and I know that now, and I will never put myself in that position again. And she just kind of let him know, listen, the first night he went out with you, he came back with this dreamy glaze in his eyes, and I've never seen him that way before. And I was a fan of yours. I just want him to be happy. That's it. That's all I care about. And she says, as long as you treat him right, that's all that matters. And she hugged him, and it was a nice moment. And then she tasted a drink that he had, and it tastes really good. And she took a second sip, which was larger. And then James popped up behind her, and he's like, how many of those have you had? And she was like, none. I just tasted the drink. And he's like, are you going to be drinking tonight? And she's like, no. He's like, I'm not going to fuck you senseless if you're going to be drunk. And she just kind of looked at him and she says, what's going on with you? Does this have something to do with that phone call with Roger? And he's like, speaking of Roger, he's on his way here. You'll meet him tonight. He's dying to meet you. So then James is still acting weird, and she kind of went off on him and was like, listen, you can't act like this. When I tell you I love you and I'm with you, and then you change up on me like you're acting now, that brings up every defense I have. And he was like, I just need to know that you'll stay with me. It'll help relieve a lot of stress. This deal I'm working on, it's a lose-lose. I'm like, oh my gosh, what the fuck is going on? So Roger comes in. He's in his early 50s. He looks nice, like a nice guy. He, of course, is like, nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. The waiter comes over looking nervous, saying the manager needs to speak with him. James gets upset because he's like, does it look like I'm here to work? He's like, he knows that, but he says it's urgent. So he leaves them and then to go see what's going on. While he's gone, she talks to Roger, and Roger's trying to figure out if she knows about his past exploits. So she's like, she's aware of all of that, like the BDSM, all of that stuff. And she says, what is going on? And he's like, well, I'm not at liberty to say. And she's like, you sound like a lawyer. Well, when he says that, that's when James walks up. And James, of course, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? She won't say anything. Roger's like, nothing. I gotta head out. I'll keep you updated on the situation. He leaves. Um, James starts kissing her, trying to get her to tell him what the conversation was about. And I'm just like, this is the part that just fucking befuddles me, because it's like, she's got to be honest immediately. You get to take your fucking time being honest. So he's kissing her and he's rubbing on her, gets her worked up. He took her in the back office, told the guy to get out, took his tie, tied it on the coat hanger, and put her hands in it, and then fucked her. And like, kept banging her and wouldn't let her come until she told him what the conversation was. So eventually she told him, but she's like, you do not get to use sex against me, and he just was like, I'm a dom, I control, like I'm in control, I control that, and that's not gonna change. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So he bangs her, lets her come, and then they did that whole I love you bullshit. But it's like, it's always trust issues on her part, but not for him. But anyway, I digress. They go back out. They have a good time. Every time Damien comes around, he seems to grab on her more. James does. So she winds up hearing a conversation between her friend Jessa and Damien. So earlier, Jessa had kind of made this statement that basically, about Damien. Yes, she had him one night, but like, he wasn't that great. And it seemed to affect Damien. And so he pulled her aside, like, trying to find out, like, what did he do wrong? Like, give her another chance to improve. Let me know. And she says, I don't do casual hookups, and I wish you would have told me that you were hung up on someone who will never want you. She is never going to leave her billionaire, hot as fuck boyfriend for you. And if you would have told me that, then I would have never slept with you. Because again, I don't do casual hookups. So they wind up, they're going back and forth, and Murph finds his way over there, and he's just interjecting stuff, saying how, yeah, he likes to chase women, all this type of crap. And so eventually he takes Jess and walks off, Damien does, so they can have a conversation. And listen, Bianca's like, he needs to try something different. Jess is a really cool person. Why not really give it a shot? Because this is not an opportunity. Like, this will never happen, her and him, so he needs to go after someone else, So then, did they leave? They might have left. I'm trying to think. I think they left. And he finds out that she's going to be working like another 2 weeks. And he was like, I thought you were doing voluntary furlough. She's like, yeah, but that company's been good to me, and I'm not going to leave them in a lurch. So I will just do the 2 weeks. So he eventually got over it. They got back to Las Vegas. They stayed at his place. And they went to the casino and had, it was either lunch or dinner with Frankie. They had a great convo. Then a guy named Tristan comes up, and he's really attractive, and she even had to look at him kind of like a damn, like he is fine. So they're all doms. Tristan, Frankie, the woman, and James. They're all doms. So we see why they're friends. So he's going to get a tattoo, Tristan, of the number 5 because he's been 5 years sober. He carries a lot of guilt about it. And, he did a lot of bad things. And his thing is, yes, he was on drugs, but he was the one that did these bad things. And that's what he has a hard time letting go of. Frankie's like, you need to, up your therapy because this doesn't sound, healthy, all this type of stuff. So then they talk about Danica, who is the woman who's going to be going over Bianca's gallery. She's going to be over that showing. And when he finds out she's going to be there, he's going to come with Frankie. So I'm like, oh my gosh, all these goddamn names. But we'll try and keep them straight. I'll try and keep them straight. Um, James had said to Tristan, like, maybe if you called Danica and it was just to just check up on her and not try and do casual fucks, like maybe you would get a different response from her. And he was just kind of like, I don't know, we'll see. Tristan winds up ordering some food and they wind up staying longer. She enjoyed him and Frankie, while James seems to be a little perturbed. So after they left and they get in the car, he was like, he's a dom. You liked him, didn't you? I could tell you were attracted to him. And she says, is he an attractive man? Yes, but I don't want him. I see him as a friend. Like, I don't want every person just because they're a dominant. And he needed to hear that because he apparently is still on this kick of thinking that the thing that she's drawn to is that dominant side of him, right? Again, here's another thing. Trust. You don't even fully trust that she really feels and wants just you. You're thinking she just wants the dominant side. So again, you're not giving 100% trust, but yet you want it. No, that's not how it works.